platform for the reconstruction of Ukraine. It is an initiative of the German federal government and brings together stakeholders based in Germany who are interested and active in the reconstruction of Ukraine. I'm going to pass to Robin Weiss to welcome us all. This is a co-event being co-sponsored by the Ukrainian Reconstruction Platform and by CARE Germany. Robin, over to you to say hello.
Thanks, Isadora. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would also like to welcome you on behalf of CARE Germany. It's great to see that there's so much interest in this topic. Last year in October, the German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine and CARE organized a first introductory event on feminist perspectives on the reconstruction of Ukraine to start a conversation on the topic. We do have a feminist development policy and a feminist foreign policy in Germany, but a lot of times there's the question how this translates into practice. Feedback from our first event last year indicated that there's an interest in practical knowledge how to integrate gender aspects into programming. So this is why in today's event, we are focusing on a very concrete tool that can help with that, which are gender markers. We're aiming at a very practical event where participants do not only listen, but also start using the tool and come into a conversation with each other on how we can integrate gender into our programming better. So at the end of the event, we want you to have an idea of how to use gender markers. And with this, I'm handing back to you, Isadora. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. And we will also be passing to some closing remarks to our colleagues from Germany at the end. So Marius will be coming back on a little bit. Great. We've got a packed agenda for you today as we look at how to integrate gender equality into recovery and reconstruction. I'm going to be giving a brief introduction in just a moment about gender markers and why they are useful for your work, whether you sit in humanitarian, reconstruction or development programming, and how they can help foster conversations and progress in terms of integrating gender into our work. We're going to then pass on to some colleagues from CARE Ukraine who are going to be talking about how they have been using the CARE Gender Marker tool and adapting the activities that they are working on in Ukraine. And then, so Ghana is going to be giving a presentation first. And then we've got two partners who are going to be sharing about their experience of using gender markers in the Ukraine context. Dana is going to be talking to us, Darina is going to be talking to us, and Timofey is also going to be talking to us from a safe space. We'll then make sure that we have plenty of time for a case study where everybody is going to be able to practice using gender marker tools. And as we said, come away from this experience building some concrete, practical skills that they need to be able to use gender markers and support gender integration into their work. I'm also just going to go through some broad housekeeping for everybody. This event will be recorded. By staying in the call, you agree to the recording and you agree that the recording will be shared on our website where all the materials from the session will be shared. So just to let you know that this session is being recorded. Fantastic. With that, we'll move into our first session and our first presentation to really set the scene about what are gender markers and why are we looking at them today. So I'm going to give an introduction on gender markers. I'm going to start off by just saying a brief word about who I am and why I am so excited about gender markers. As I said before, my name is Isadora Key and I love gender markers. I teach courses on gender markers, I create gender markers, and I'm very excited to co-chair also a working group on gender markers. So very much excited to be talking about this tool. What is a gender marker? For many of you, this might be the very first time you've ever heard of gender markers. So in this short presentation, I'm going to be taking you through what is a gender marker, why do we use them, who should use them, and how do we use them well? So what is a gender marker in its most simple form? Well, in its most simple form, a gender marker is a tool. It is a tool that can help you to look at how well you've integrated gender equality into your work, be it strategy work, concept notes, design, or implementation. It is a really simple tool that distills what gender experts know about what good gender integration looks like and breaks it down into some very simple steps that we want everyone to be able to take to do the best job that they can of integrating gender equality into their work. Gender equality markers are used in all types of work. And that's particularly relevant here for the reconstruction platform, humanitarian, reconstruction, and development. So you'll find different kinds of markers being used in different spaces. Some can be used in multiple spaces, and some are used by different actors. But markers are used across the humanitarian, reconstruction, and development divide. They really do apply to all forms of programming. Now, the really important point about markers, so they're a simple tool that you can use to make sure, how am I doing to integrate in the process of integrating gender equality into my work? That's really what markers tell you. They're really useful for all types of programming and all types of work. There really isn't a moment when you have to stop using gender markers. If you're at project design, you can use them all the way through to implementation. And a really important part of gender markers is they do give you a score. They tell you how well you're traveling on a continuum. There are many kinds of gender continuums, but they indicate to what extent is the work you're doing likely to be contributing to gender transformative outcomes. So outcomes that really are going towards more equitable gender relations for everyone. So what you need to remember from this slide is that gender markers are a simple tool that are there for you to use. There are lots of them, and we're going to talk about a couple of the different markers as we go through this presentation. But gender markers are a simple tool to help you do the work of gender mainstreaming and gender integration. That's why they're a great choice for this seminar today, because they really are a tool that looks at the heart of how you do this. The second question about gender markers is who should use them? I always say that gender markers are for everyone. When we design gender markers, we really do want entire organizations to be able to use them. They are not simply a tool for gender experts. That is a mistake that's commonly made. Oh, we have a gender marker. We should ask our gender person to fill it in. Gender markers really, we spent a lot of time making sure we drill down to make sure these tools are really easy for everyone to be able to use. And in this way, they can save gender experts a lot of time because by distilling the key elements of their programming and their work, they can encourage and share that information with lots of people. But they are designed to be used by generalists. So if you're sitting here and you're like, but I'm a humanitarian programmer, or I'm building reconstruction and housing in Ukraine, why would I look at a gender marker? You are exactly the audience for a gender marker tool. They are generalist tools. They are not tools for gender experts. So that is the first thing to remember. I love to think about gender markers as a conversation. At its best, gender markers are not tick boxes. They are not a way of scoring you simply and telling you whether you're doing a good job or a bad job. They are designed to be able to foster conversations, a common conversation throughout an organization or with another organization. How well are we doing? Are we really bringing gender equality into this work? Where are the areas we can strengthen and improve? You will, with a gender marker, get a score, and they are important. People do love a grade, but really the grade is less important than the conversation and discussion that goes around them. And that is really the secret for improving gender equality in all of our work. It's by having an open conversation about how we can all do this work better. And gender markers allow us a common language often to have those conversations and to help people for whom gender equality work is perhaps not their area of expertise to be able to do this better. Why are they useful? Why would you use a gender marker? Well, I hope I've given you a bit of passion for using gender markers. I know we love them as tools, but why should you love them? Well, sometimes you'll use a gender marker because you have to. There are many, many situations where a gender marker is a donor requirement. Many donors require you to complete a gender marker form or assess you against a gender marker as a criteria for funding. And that is an important reason why gender markers are powerful and why they are used. They can act as a conversation between your organization and a donor organization to encourage you to take practical steps to integrate gender into that work. And there's just a few examples of some of the donors who require gender markers, including Germany, that you may want to be aware of. So sometimes you will use a marker because you simply have to. It's always worth remembering that gender markers are designed to support you to do better gender integration work, and at their best, really identify the concrete steps you can take to do that. So yes, they may be a donor requirement, but they're also a really useful tool that gender experts have been using now for more than a decade to make sure we can have those large conversations about transformative change throughout organizations and throughout the sector. They really do work and they can be very effective if used well. If you're a specific organization, you may have your own gender marker. So we've talked about donor markers. We've talked a little bit about how you may have it as a tool that supports sector-wide work. And finally, we also have organization-specific gender markers. And those are really important to give you a sense of how well your whole organization is tracking in terms of gender mainstreaming. If you're not doing a good job at gender analysis, it can help you to focus time and energy there. If you're doing a wonderful job at gender analysis, but a poor job at women's participation, it can help you identify areas you need to strengthen. Or if your monitoring and evaluation system is not working as well as it could be to make sure diverse data is collected, it can help you do that too. And so they are really, really useful tools for a whole range of different purposes. So think about why you might want to use a gender marker and how it might be useful in your work. My final slide is just to give you some tips, and I know our wonderful care colleagues are going to be talking about this in just a moment, about how to use gender markers properly. So they're going to be talking a little bit about a specific gender marker. We're going to have an exercise around that. It's going to be really fun. But I just wanted to give you some overall guidance on how to use them well. And this works for donor markers or organizational markers or sectorial markers you may come across. One of the important points that you'll see in many markers, but not in all, is they help you assess what is the overall intention or objective of the project. So they can really help you drill down, and we see this with the OECD DAC, Gender Equality Policy Marker, and the care gender markers, and by definition also the donor markers that are derived from the OECD DAC marker, that this assessing the objective is really important. So it helps you to unpack and to look across your funding portfolio to see where are we spending our money? Is it on gender specific work? Is it on gender mainstreaming work? And where are we putting our energies? The next point to highlight is that most of the gender markers use a common criteria. There are some differences between them, but many of them do use a common criteria of gender analysis, adapted activities, participation, protection, and M&E. So these are common criteria that you'll see across different markers. And once you master them for one, be it for the ECHO marker or for the IASC marker, you'll be able to transfer those skills to other markers. The marking is slightly different, the format may be different, but it is by hard work and diligent coordination, there is a quite common criteria that you'd often be looking at. My next tip is really a simple one. Follow the logic of the tool. Often people will decide for themselves, but I think that this project is gender transformative. It grades a 4 or it grades a 2 or a 3. Gender markers don't work like that. They take you away from you deciding how gender transformative a project is or how well you're mainstreaming gender to really taking you step by step so you can assess this. So I encourage you to really follow the logic of the tool. Don't sit there and decide for yourself, like, well, I want this project to be like this, therefore it's like this. Use the tool as they were designed for it. It will get you much better answers. Some of you who've been working in this space for a long time may be familiar with gender markers at the concept note or project design level. I want to flag that we're now in gender markers 2.0, and most of the gender markers that are being used work at both the project design and the implementation level. So it can be used both for designing great projects and for implementing them. And finally, that word conversation comes up again. Gender markers, we didn't spend all of this time developing them, designing them, rolling them out for them to sit there as a checkbox that assesses you. They are tools for conversation. And I know that our colleagues in a moment will talk about this. So these were all the points I wanted to make right now. And I am very excited to thank you very much for your time. And I will pass over to our next speakers, if you'll allow me just to stop sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isadora. And let me continue with sharing our experience from on behalf of Karen. Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Ganna, and I am representing Care Ukraine. I'm actually very pleased to have this opportunity to share our experience with you. Let me just start demonstrating my PowerPoint. Please confirm if you could see it okay.
Бачите чудово.
We can, Ghana.
Great, thank you. So, just as a brief introduction, as you may know, dear colleagues, CARE has started its activities in Ukraine just immediately after the full-scale invasion by Russia in February 2022. And since then, we have a broad portfolio of different humanitarian projects. We have dozens of partners supporting us on the ground with implementing activities. And of course, we need some tools to support us with integrating gender perspectives in all our humanitarian programming, because as CARE, we put gender equality, we put women's empowerment in the heart of all our programming. And the gender marker as a tool of program quality, as a tool of meal system, is a brilliant tool in this relation. Gender markers are applied by CARE globally, and we have certain commitments about our projects to be at least gender sensitive as a minimum, but to be gender transformative as much as possible. So why do we use CARE markers? Definitely to establish minimum standards in our programming. We can establish some standard criteria. We ensure minimum commitments on gender equality in different technical areas, such as shelter, wash, protection, livelihoods, whatever. We can measure some transformative changes by assessing not only the level of gender mainstreaming, of gender integration in technical areas, but also by looking at some positive shifts, some positive changes in terms of social norms change, in terms of women's leadership, women's empowerment, trying to challenge those harmful gender stereotypes and norms which are still existing in society. Of course, gender marker is a tool to increase accountability of all our programming. It's very useful. It supports us with identifying some gaps, identifying some lessons learned to plan for a better integration and for strengthening of gender mainstreaming in all our activities. By applying gender marker, we can assess all our projects, starting from gender unaware, those programs that ignore or are completely unaware of gender norms, to gender neutral, gender sensitive, gender responsive, and even gender transformative. Let me very briefly explain what do we mean by gender sensitive programming, because as I said, we aim to make all our programs, all our projects at minimum gender sensitive. By planning these projects, we recognize that women, men, boys, girls, people of different genders can have different needs, specific vulnerabilities in humanitarian contexts, and we try to address these different needs by our activities, by our projects. However, we do not aim to change social norms with this project activities. We do not try to challenge some stereotypes and unequitable relations in society. For gender transformative projects, there should be some activities, some policies, some programs in place that have as their basic objective the change of gender norms and stereotypes to promote gender equality. For example, if we work with women to empower them, we implement some leadership programs, we work with vulnerable groups of women, such as Roma community, Roma women, to support them with empowerment, with taking more voices, with taking more participation in public life. That would be gender transformative, because we try to change unequal norms and social relations which exist in society. But of course, we recognize, just to echo Isadora, that gender marker is more a learning conversation. That's a participatory exercise to discuss, to have some reflections on how to improve our programming in terms of mainstreaming gender. That is not a test of any project, that is not a judgment on how we do as implementers, how our partners are doing in terms of implementing project activities. This is not a competition. That's an honest, a frank conversation to identify some gaps, some benefits also, and to move forward with more gender-sensitive programming. We apply gender markers at all stages of the project throughout the whole life cycle. It's a mandatory requirement to apply gender marker when new projects are designed or planned, to have in mind all these issues related to gender-sensitive activities planning, related to proper engagement of our project participants in all activities, to providing inclusive feedback mechanisms, and so on. So gender markers, they anticipate that gender integration should be mainstreamed in all components of projects, in terms of analysis that informs project, in terms of project activities that have to be adapted to different needs of different people, in terms of participation in project processes, such as inclusive feedback mechanisms, such as transparent information sharing, which can be accessible for people of different genders, of different ages, of different disability status, such as ensuring consultations, some focus group discussions with participants to hear their voices and to integrate their opinions, their perspectives in project implementation, monitoring, and follow-up, and also integration of gender issues in terms of meal systems, in terms of monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. To apply gender markers, there is a special vetting form used, which is quite a simple checklist where you need to provide your responses just to a couple of questions. These questions seem very simple, but they require a lot of reflections, a lot of discussions, and it's very useful, very helpful to have different perspectives when discussing these questions, to engage partners, to engage representatives of civil society working on the ground who have a good understanding of real needs and challenges for different population groups. So as CARE Ukraine, we try to make this exercise as much participatory as possible, as much inclusive as possible, planning for specific sessions, specific workshops with our partners to have these reflective discussions. So the first step to apply the gender marker is to provide answer to a question about project objectives. We need to decide if the current project is working with existing gender roles and relations, not trying to challenge or change all these harmful stereotypes and relations, or we aim to provide some transformative challenges. By our activities, we may have some specific project activities targeted at promoting gender equality, at supporting more coordination, more engagement of our participants to the project activities. And depending on this, on the answer, we may need to fill only one of columns which are used for assessment. As a result, we will have a score which will lead us either to gender sensitive or to gender transformative projects as a optimistic option, but we may also have some projects they are not gender sensitive, and that could be a reason to get back and to redesign some interventions, some project activities. So basically, to classify our projects as gender sensitive or gender transformative, we need to provide positive answers just to 4 questions related to the level of gender integration in analysis that informed the project, to gender integration of activities anticipated by this project, if they are adapted to meet any needs which has been identified in gender analysis. And for gender transformative projects, we have more sophisticated questions that anticipate more detailed gender analysis of different needs and different activities that should be applied in our programming. The next question is related to participation in project processes. So we need to think if our project provides an opportunity of a meaningful participation for people of all genders in information sharing, in decision-making related to project implementation and project monitoring, and to responsive feedback mechanisms as part of our programming. And the final question is related to the integration of gender considerations to the meal systems. Are monitoring systems collecting and analyzing sex disaggregated data, age disaggregated data? Do project monitoring system analyze different capacities, vulnerabilities, and needs of all participants? Let me briefly share. Usually we have a very specific and tailored training on gender markers because you need maybe a couple of hours to understand all these criteria, all these procedures to apply gender markers. Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of time right now. We may provide just only a brief overview, but I would like to bring your attention to some lessons learned from Ukraine response based on the use of gender marker. So we see gender marker as a learning and reflection tool, not just a tick box exercise as part of meal. It's very accessible and practically oriented for diverse set of users. It can be used by non-gender specialists, and we usually try to bring technical people, technical experts for this exercise related to gender markers. It is critical to apply gender markers throughout the whole project to see different gaps and to work on lessons learned in the next steps. And it's critical to engage partners in the discussions, consultations, to have their different perspectives, to have different voices from the grassroots movement, specifically from civil society. And of course, the tool's greatest asset is its capacity to generate awareness, dialogue, learning, and program improvement in terms of different technical sectors and project activities. Another important advantage, I would say, is related to a better understanding of the importance of gender analysis when we apply gender marker, because we can see what kind of gender-sensitive data of tailored information may be needed to provide adequate, proper response, considering gender-specific needs of different groups of people. For this purpose, there is another program quality tool, rapid gender analysis, which is closely correlated and linked to the use of gender marker and supports with relevant information to inform different project activities. Some examples related to the outcomes, to the results of applying gender marker in Ukraine. As you can see at this diagram, at this chart, we had a huge progress in terms of a better gender integration during the 2 recent years. A proportion of projects which we consider gender transformative has increased recently, and I'm very pleased to associate it with the use of gender markers. With adapting activities of our projects based on gender analysis, based on these reflective sessions and conversations. For example, we can see more progress in terms of changing social norms through engaging men in activities that have traditionally been considered as targeting women and girls, such as GBV, SRH programs, and there are some certain approaches to adjust our activities based on gender markers, such as tailored messaging to engage more men, more boys in different program activities, such as shift to online sessions in case for training programs, for training modules, in case if some project participants feel themselves uncomfortable with discussing some sensitive issues in person. And of course, a huge benefit, a huge advantage of the use of gender marker is related to improved participation and strengthened partnership. Because
If I may stop you there just to wrap up in just one word, because we want to make sure we have time to hear from your partners about how they've been using the tool. So, Gana, could I ask you just to sum up in briefly, and then we'll pass on to your colleagues.
Yes, of course. Just one final tip, hint I would like to share with colleagues, with our partners related to gender marker, that it's very helpful in terms of planning for the next and future interventions, because you can elaborate a very detailed, very concrete gender action plans with your partners, with your colleagues, with your project teams, to have some commitments, some real commitments on gender integration. And you can like trace the progress later and make some lessons learned in terms of successes with gender mainstreaming, gender integrations. Over from my side, I would like to stop here and pass it over to our amazing partners from Ukraine, who I hope will share their experience and their lessons from the use of this tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Gana. And we are passing to Darina. Darina, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Darina. I'm Advocacy and Partnership Manager at NGO Girls, and I would like to tell in more details how CARE Gender and Age Marker helped us to adopt our projects and program development, a few insights and lessons learned in this process. So to start, we've integrated gender and age marker across the entire project. And we began with rapid gender analysis and local needs assessment, which helped us to identify specific risks and needs specifically for women, but also men, girls, and boys. And this analysis also contributed to and helped us to shape activities. Among the main activities in the project we have together with CARE, it's healthcare, psychological support delivered through mobile teams, and also there are some gender sensitive initiatives such as awareness trainings on GBV prevention and sexual reproductive health. And also our monitoring system disaggregates data by sex, age, and disability, which helps to track some changing needs or some vulnerabilities throughout the project. Now I would like to give two more concrete examples of how this gender sensitive and sometimes even gender transformative approach is making a difference in our project. So firstly, we have this case management activity where we usually help to survivors of GBV, but not only. Our initial focus was on women. In terms of this activity, we basically provide survivors with everything they need, starting from legal assistance to psychological help, if needed, cash or vouchers. So our initial focus was on women, as I mentioned, but also we wanted to challenge some traditional social norms by engaging more men into this case management. And that's where we face some challenges because there is definitely a big stigma around this issue that prevents many men from seeking this type of support. And also there is a big issue around conscription concerns and fears around sharing documents. As a result, we still were able to engage men to this activity, but as per lessons learned for us, and also I think that other partners may find it relevant, is as simple as it is to hire male psychologists if we want to challenge this social norm and want to engage more men. And also when it comes to document sharing, and if we talk about some cash or voucher assistance, to think of some ways, and that's also where gender and age marker can be relevant, on what activities could be provided without many document sharing. Let's take API, individual protection assistance, or I think there are any other ways in order how to do that. The second example is quite an expected cascade effect that we observed. So thanks to the gender and age marker, we introduced such quite a gender sensitive activity as trainings on GBV prevention and mitigation for teachers and social actors. And in our previous projects, we saw that teachers usually, they weren't really willing to attend these trainings, or were doing it for the sake of certificates, because they also have to face some requirements from the Ministry of Education. But this time, and I think it also was because of we implemented gender and age marker considerations to the project, we saw the teachers were active. They attended these trainings and saw it as a beneficial itself. Besides that, we have really cool success story that after we trained a cohort of teachers on GBV prevention and mitigation, they invited us to school whereas they were conducting similar trainings to children, and it wasn't a requirement. They just wanted to share this knowledge, and that was a good example of how so-called grassroots cascade effect was sparked. And that was also quite a breakthrough for us. Now I would like to proceed with some main message, because as Ukraine is moving into a long-term recovery phase and there is opportunity of long-term projects, there is also a unique opportunity for changes which can be permanent and changes that should be gender sensitive and gender transformative. Because as I mentioned, based on these examples, we're seeing the society is shifting away from outdated Soviet, post-Soviet gender norms towards modern and democratic model. But definitely this needs sustainable support. So my call for action will be to ensure that Ukrainian reconstruction and Ukrainian recovery efforts remain gender sensitive as a bare minimum, but gender transformative where possible, because we see that these small grassroots changes are happening, but we need help to make them more sustainable and more regular. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Irina, fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll pass to Timofey. Timofey, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Alex. Good day, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share our experience and insights from Ukraine. My name is Timofey Seterly. I am the head of Safe Space NGO here in Zaporizhia, Ukraine. The priorities of Safe Space activities are the response to gender-based violence, protection and assistance to GBV survivors, and the advocating of gender equality and gender inclusion in Ukraine. The program we have been implementing in partnership with Care Ukraine covers mostly the rural communities in Zaporizhia Oblast and the most vulnerable people. The main point I would like to share with you is the adoption and transformation of the current program according to the gender markers we use with Care Ukraine. So at the humanitarian program's initial stage, we assessed the crucial needs, challenges, and risks that women and girls face in rural areas during wartime. Indeed, we conducted surveys, focus group discussions, and researches among women and girls, and we have found the rapidly increasing risk of GBV, and the lack of protection mechanisms. Here we are talking about local governmental programs available for survivors' protection. At this stage, the gender marker applied to the program was marked as gender sensitive, and it was absolutely acceptable to start the program intervention here. So at this stage we provided psychosocial support and humanitarian aid for survivors and started training GBV actors to make them capable to respond in GBV appropriately using and the survivor-oriented approaches. In such a way, we have been working for months, partially covering only the basic needs of women and girls. However, the current GBV environment analysis has shown that the general situation has remained the same. At this stage, we started extensive focus group discussion in rural areas involving women and girls from all social groups, including marginalized communities. The main point was a research in general security and safety risks for women and girls. We revealed the critical isolation of marginalized people and identified categories that need to be sufficiently included in current humanitarian and local support programs. We also were expectedly surprised by the changing and transforming gender roles in communities. Here we are talking about women in uniform, volunteers, women who lost partners, children, and relatives, women with children who lost bread makers, and older people without any support and assistance. We observed how women became engaging in traditionally male professions, taking much more responsibility in communities. Despite these changes, we didn't see sufficient improvement in developing gender-responsive programming to respond different needs and gender inclusion locally. Struggling to avoid gender exclusion and women's isolation, we started advocating women's mobilization in rural areas, establishing and supporting women's initiative groups, and advocating women's leadership in communities. We have trained and supported women leaders in communities and assisted them in communicating with local authorities and the government. Expectedly, we started to receive fruitful feedback from women. At this point, we could learn about critical needs, security and safety issues in communities, and get proposals from them on improving protection, assistance, and quality of life. Nevertheless, we still didn't know what tool to use to affect local government programs to resolve gender-sensitive issues. The solution was found, and we encouraged women initiative groups to join Coalition 1325, Women, Peace and Security here in Zaporizhia. Ukraine adopted UN Security Council Resolution 1325, Women, Peace and Security, which is mandatory for implementation at the national and regional levels. The resolution is devoted to improving the state of women and girls, men and boys, through the implementing tasks and strategies directed at the gender equality, inclusion, and peace building, as defined in the National and Regional Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security in Ukraine. As a leading organization of Coalition 1325 here in Zaporizhia, we encouraged women's group to cooperate with local authorities in rural communities and represented them as full members of the coalition. By empowering women, we opened doors in governmental offices. We strengthened their voices in the decision-making and political process, developing the representing the local action plan for women, peace and security at the community level. We are proud that Ukraine is the first and only country where local action plans are developed and adopted, considering crucial security and safety needs and risks for specific communities. And we are proud to be the implementers of this initiative together with Care Ukraine. As mentioned above, it was the first time we transformed the program from the gender sensitive to gender transforming. This became possible because of care support and the gender markers we first used in our activities. So we strongly believe that with the support of leading global democracies, Ukraine will take its place among leaders in gender equality and inclusion. Thank you very much. It's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Timofey. And thank you all to all of our panelists. We are going to move into our breakout room activities. I see Degla's question about the gender continuum. Please, Degla, bring that into your breakout room. It's going to be a fantastic time where you can really bring the conversation about your experiences and your knowledge of the different kinds of programming and the discussion you want to have into the space. We are going to break into, for the next 25 minutes, we're going to be working in small groups. Your teams will be assigned to you, and you will have breakout rooms starting in just a minute. We will invite everybody to come back from their breakout rooms at 4:45 p.m. Germany time. And also just a reminder, we have about 7 groups. Your facilitators for the discussion are all experienced moderators, but they are not all gender experts. So you may have questions that they don't have an answer to, and that is fine. That is why we have some time coming back to bring questions back to plenary. So yeah, just to give everyone this activity, will give everyone a taste of how to use gender markers and to have more discussion and exchange and peer learning between all of you on the topics that matter to you. Victor, if I can ask you to break us into breakout rooms now, that would be fantastic. There will be a Ukrainian language discussion happening here in the main room. For those of you who wish to have this discussion in Ukrainian, please go to your breakout room now if you would like to do so. Thank you very much. And you have 25 minutes for this discussion. For our moderators, can you see the breakout rooms and can you all go to your different rooms? Victor, I'm confused. think the breakout rooms everyone's in one giant room. Is that right?
That should not be the case. There are 6 breakout rooms. There are a number of people still in this room. I will now refer them to the different rooms.
Thank you.
Everybody here listening in, please, it will take 2 minutes. You will be in a room momentarily.
Perfect.
Can you also please tell which facilitator is assigned to which room? Because it's
Yeah.
not on the list.
Yes, I am assigning the facilitators. You'll be in a
Thank
room
you. Thank
within
you.
a minute.
Very much.
No worries.
And thank you for everyone for holding fire. We're looking forward to the conversation in just a minute. May I suggest we pause the recording now, please, as well, because the breakout rooms will